So this week we're beginning the second book of Moses, the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, as they're known, the 5 books. Technically speaking, there are really 7 books, but that's a separate discussion. There really, in Bamidbar, there are 3 books. By the portion of Vayhi B'Misela Aaron is its own portion, so the portion before that's one, and the one after, but we'll just go with the typical 5. Bereshis, Shemos, Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Dvarim. And Shemos is known as the book of Golus v'Geula, the book of exile and redemption. And over the next couple of weeks, Shemos, Va'era, Bo, Bishalach, Yisro, we're going to find a lot of discussion, a lot of miracles happening in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, and Kriyas Yamsef, the splitting of the Red Sea. So it's a good idea to, maybe we'll discuss a little bit about miracles as a good introduction into the whole Sefer of Shemos. So we know, as the Ramban tells us, Nachmanides, everything's a nes. What do you mean miracle? Everything that happens in life is a miracle, except, as the Ramban explains, some things that happen all the time we call nature. Some things that happen once in a while we call it supernatural. So everything we'll know is a miracle, but for our purposes, when we talk about a miracle, I'll be referring to a supernatural miracle, God breaking the regular laws of Teva. And in fact, the Bali Musa point out that it's to this concept that if you told someone a baby was born today, I'm sure there were many, they'll just yawn. You think it's going to make the headlines, unless maybe it's someone special. But if you told someone, you know what, I resurrected the dead today, I did Tchiyas HaMesim, wow, you'll have a whole, they'll make the rounds on all the TV shows, wow, what a miracle, tell me about it. The Bali Musa point out it's a greater miracle that a baby is born than resurrecting the dead, because a baby born comes from nothing, a tipa strucha, a little drop. But when it comes to Tchiyas HaMesim, resurrecting the dead, the body's there, it's just a matter of getting it back together. So really, with this something we used to, we're more impressed by, but really, ultimately, everything's a miracle. And in fact, there's a famous story with Beis Halevi, who was not from the Hasidic background, who were into miracles. There was someone, a very wealthy person, who was a little miser, let's say. It wasn't quick for him to go into his pocket and give to tzedakah, but he liked miracles. So the Beis Halevi said, you know what, how about if I do a miracle, will you give X amount to tzedakah? He said, okay, if you do a miracle, I will give tzedakah. So he says, okay, you see these, take out what's make up at 4 $1,000 bills, or coins, whatever they may be, put them on this bowl, put them on the 4 legs of the table. I'll have a miracle happen that the 4 coins or dollars will end up on the bowl right on the table. He says, okay, that sounds like a good miracle. Okay. He puts his $1,000 coins down, and he says, you ready? So he says, Chaim, his son, Rav Chaim, he said, go take the coins and put them on the bowl. He says, wait a second, that's not a miracle. He says, getting money out of you is a miracle. So however you want to define miracle, we'll work with the Ramban that everything's a nes, but that's what the example the Ramban gives is, when the Jews entered the land of Israel, Yoshua said, you know what? We're going to have to start planting. And the grass will grow, crops, fertilizer, the whole works, and trees will grow, and that's how you're going to end up eating. They said, what? What a miracle. Even from a little seed in the ground, you're going to have a 50-foot tree? No way, I can't believe it. And someone says, yes, okay, so of course we take that as nature. But if someone tells you know what, forget about Fortinos, the barn, tomorrow morning food's going to come down from heaven, they'll say, wow, that's a miracle. So the Jews in the Midbar, who were accustomed to food from heaven, they took that as the normal way. when they had to plant and work for the food. Wow, that's a miracle. But us, it's just the opposite. It's all a matter of the differences. Something happens all the time. We call it nature, but it happens once in a while. It's supernatural. So where are all the miracles today? Do we have miracles today? There's a famous Gemara in Yuma. The Gemara says, and Yuma and Daf Chav Tesam Aleph or Chav Tesam Beis 29. The Gemara says, "Gamnatzeach al Yeles Hashach." It quotes from Tehillim that the Gemara says that just like when morning comes, it's the end of night. So too, Purim is the end of all miracles. Esther is Purim. So they point out that just like when it's nighttime, when it's day, the night is over, so too Esther Purim is Sof Kol Hanisim, is the end of all miracles. So the Gemara says, what about Hanukkah? What are you talking about? Haven't you heard of the Yontif of Hanukkah? It wasn't that long ago. We're in the holiday season of Hanukkah. So the Gemara says, different interpretations of what the Gemara says, but ultimately the Gemara says that Purim was the end of all the Torah Shebeksav miracles. Hanukkah was a separate story. But ultimately from the Gemara in Yuma, it seems to say miracles are over. We don't have any more miracles. And the Gemara says as well in Brachas 20 Chaf Amid Aleph Amid Beis, the Gemara says Abaye said no more miracles today. We're not on the same level. The generations before sacrifice were Moser Nefesh. They got the miracles. Today we don't have any more miracles. So from the Gemara in Yuma, Daf Chav Tes, and from the Gemara in Brachas Daf Chav, the implications are no more miracles today. However, if you open up a Shulchan Aruch, the Machaber in Reish Yud Ches, right, if you walk by a place where a miracle happened, you make a bracha, Sha'asali Neis B'makam Hazeh. You make a bracha that a miracle happened on this place. And in Sif Tes, it explains, we're only talking about a bracha on a miracle that was Mimala Miderach HaTeva, above the laws of Teva. I think, like an example, you're walking in Arizona, and you're thirsty, and let's say the water starts sprouting out of the ground in the middle of the desert. So we have a question. On one hand, with the Gemara in Brachas and Yuma, it seems no more miracles today. But from the Gemara, from the Shulchan Aruch, it's a Mishnah Brura, which lived the Mishnah Brura lived the past 100 years or so. There are miracles. So which one is it? Question number 2. Let's assume there are miracles. Do we want miracles to happen? Would you want a miracle to happen to you? In other words, are miracles free or do they cost you? So the Gemara in Tainis, Daf Chav Daled 24, has a famous story. Rabbi Yossi hired workers. And he went out to the fields and he realized, and the workers were getting hungry, they're working all day, and they realized they forgot to bring them the lunch. So they were sitting under, I think it was a date tree or some type of tree, and he said, basically let the dates that are unripe, become ripe. And basically a miracle happened, they became ripe, and the people ate. So Rav Yossi, I think, father came and said, oh, you're here, you forgot your lunches, I'm sure you're all very hungry. They said, sorry, we're the furthest thing from hungry. We just ate. We had all these delicious figs or dates, whatever they were. So the Gemara, so then when they told Rav Yossi's father what happened, he was very upset at his son. He said, just like you caused God to cause the dates or figs to ripen before their time, so too you will go before your time. And he ended up dying. But the Gemara rebukes Rav Yossi's father for being too harsh. That's a separate discussion. But the bottom line is, are miracles free? It cost him his life. Do I want, even if we assume there are miracles, do I want a miracle? On the other hand, as well, there's a Gemara in Shabbos, Nun Gimel, Amid Beis. A person's wife died, he had a young child, and he had no food, he was afflicted with poverty. And a miracle happened, he grew breasts, and he breastfed the child. You'll say, wow, what a miracle, how great this person is. So the rabbi says, no, Kama Garua, how terrible it is, you caused God to break the laws of nature, that you had the man breastfeed and not the woman. Or you didn't go, someone didn't knock on your door and give you a gallon of milk. So we see again, who wants miracles? Are you kidding me? They seem to cost a high little penny there. On the other hand, there's another Gemara on the next page on Tainus, Chaf Hey 25, with the Gemara talks about the story with the oil and vinegar, that the Gemara says that the daughter by mistake, she was lighting Friday night candles, and instead of putting oil in, she put vinegar. And she went to her father, and her father said, don't worry about it. He who causes oil to burn will also cause vinegar to burn. And burn it did. I think the Gemara says they were able to use that light for Havdalah for the next, after Shabbos was over. So the Gemara, so we see, and he wasn't worried about, it was Hanina ben Dosa, I believe. He wasn't worried about miracles. He said, great, bring it on. What's the difference? Oil, vinegar, so we have so number one, are there miracles today? It seems to be a question. Question two, even if we assume there are miracles, but do you want them or not? They seem to cost. They cost Rav Yossi, it cost and it cost the person who grew breasts. On the other hand, Hanina Mendoza, they didn't seem to care. Another question, Q3. You daven for a miracle. We say you don't daven for miracles, because in general, ein somchen al hanes, that we don't rely on miracles, because number one is maybe miracle, because maybe it won't happen, and even if it does, menachin lo zechu yasav, you could lose your merits. So the Gemara talks about in Brachas Nun Daled, that about the concept of tefillah shav, a wasted prayer. Like after the wife is pregnant for a certain amount of time, to be mispala for a boy or a girl is a tefillah shav, because it's already, whatever happened already happened. Or driving home and there's fire engines on your block, and you say, I hope the fire is not in my house. Who are you actually helping? It's in your neighbor's house? But obviously it's a tefillah shav because the fire is there already. You can't pray for something that already, the Gemara talks about, you don't pray for miracles, like you don't pray that they should change the sex from a boy to a girl. The Gemara says, we know the whole incident with Leah and Rachel, that she realized that if she had another son, Rachel would have less than the maidservant. So many discussions what happened in vitro or not, but basically Dinah turned into Yosef and Yosef to Dinah. That's why interesting they point out that Dinah had tendencies of a man, because she was conceived as a man. She went out on the fields and all that during that time, which wasn't uncommon. And we see the Torah describes Yosef as someone worrying about his looks, playing with his hair, taking on some feminine qualities. So they point out interesting that had to do with the conception. So we see that, but Leah did do a miracle. Leah is different. But in general, one cannot pray for a nace. So we see you don't pray for a nace. Ein som kan al nace. On the other hand, the Gemara talks about that we know, let's say we just finished Hanukkah not that long ago, that if you forget to say Al Hanisim in Shemot Esrei, in Birkas HaMazon, there's a special Harakaman, you could say, that God do miracles. I pray you did miracles just like you did in the time of, of Hanukkah. So again, so we're just really saying you don't pray for miracles. Yet in Benjamin we do pray. And then, so do we daven for miracles or not? From the Gemara in Brachas it seems no, but from the Al Hanisim, from the Harachaman, it seems like we do.
Don't we pray for resuscitation of the dead in the Amidah? There's a mention of it.
No, right, but that's we're not praying. We're talking about the concept that there will be Tchiyas HaMesim.
Right.
We're not praying that this, that a miracle, when there's a time after, whenever that time is after the Mashiach, that people will be resurrected.
Mm-hmm.
But we might be praying that the time comes soon. But we're not. Right. We're just more describing, God's powers.
Right. It's not a direct.
Right. So should you use it? Should you use a miracle? So, on one hand, we say Ein Som Kanal Anes, because you're losing up your merits. On the other hand, the Gemara tells us in Brachas, Chanina ben Dosa, there was a yeshiva. There was a snake running around the yeshiva, like bees in your room. Try teaching a class like that. Everyone's screaming. So they called in Chanina ben Dosa, said the snake went into that hole. So Chanina ben Dosa took off his shoes, put his bare foot on top of the hole, and the snake bit him, and he died. That is, the snake died, not Chanina ben Dosa. And the yeshiva, and they started singing the song, "Woe is it to the snake that meets Chanina ben Dosa." So, Ein Tzom Ch'nal Anes, what's he doing? I said you can't rely on miracles. He went ahead and in fact, and yet on the other hand, we know the story with Uzzah, the person, the Aaron apparently looked like it was falling, and he went ahead to try to catch it, and he was punished. Because Gemara says the Aaron carries itself, doesn't need someone else to carry it. So, Ein Tzom Ch'nal Anes, what do you mean? Like we don't rely on miracles. So again, do we have miracles today or not? From the Gemara in Yuma and Brachas, it seems no. From the Shulchan Aruch, it seems yes. So question number 2: are miracles good for us? Do we want them to happen? So from Tainis, Chav Dalet, and Nun Gimel, Rav Yossi with the workers and the person who had to breastfeed his kids, it seems to be a negative. But in Tainis, Chaf Aleph, we see the oil and vinegar, he was fine. That let the vinegar lit the whole time. Do we daven for miracles? On one hand, the Gemara in Bracha says no. On the other hand, if we get Harachaman in Chanukah, if we forget Al Hanisim in Chanukah, we say Harachaman. And should we use it? Because we say Ein Som Kanal Anes, because Benachon Lo Tzechuyasa. So, the Gedolei Achronim point out, Rav Dessler, Rav Aaron Kotler, others, there are 2 types of miracles. Some are, we'll see, sometimes it's good to have and sometimes it's not. If you ask God for a momentary suspension of the laws of Teva, breaking the rules, so that's Kama Garua. How terrible, you're asking God to break the laws of nature. But if you reach a level above the laws of nature, so that's something. Moshe Rabbeinu was on Har Sinai 40 days and 40 nights, didn't eat. You think he asked God not to eat? He wasn't even noticing. He didn't notice that there were no ribs, no fries, no chocolate. He was on that level where he was Mimala. Nature is very, not for us, but for someone who's great as Moshe, nature is very limiting. And you become so great, like Chanina ben Dosa, other the great ones, you could rise above the laws of nature. So, it depends, So, to ask God to break the laws of nature, that's not good. So therefore, when you should hope for a miracle happen, derech hateva, like he shouldn't have to grow breasts. He could have had someone should have delivered milk to him, or the case of Rabbi Yossi, he could have waited, and got food. But the case of Chanina ben Dosa, his whole house was full of them. That's the way they lived. If you're on that level where you rose above the laws of nature, so then it's okay. What's the difference? Vinegar, oil, it's all the same. to us who aren't on that level, so we don't go around, just doing miracles for the sake of miracles. And in fact, why do we want a miracle to happen? We're surrounded by all the different things that go on, and God, please do a little nace for me. So as the Rambam writes, anyone who's a maimin, anyone who's a believer based on miracles, the Rambam calls a fool. No one believes because of miracles. Miracles don't hurt, but anyone's emunah, it says emunah is for Jews. Don't worry. That's why the different Hasidim were breaking off from the miracles. They said, today we have to work on our emunah. In fact, there's a famous story with Bobo the acrobat, Niagara Falls, that he went by, and he says, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to walk on a tightrope across Niagara Falls. They said, yay, Bobo, you're the best. And he went ahead and did it. He said, come back tomorrow, bring your friends and family. I'm going to do something better. Everyone comes back tomorrow. He says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to walk across blindfolded on the tightrope. And he blindfolds himself and he walks, and all the fans are going crazy. Yeah, Bo, you're the best. He said, you've seen nothing. Come back tomorrow. We're going to do something special. So they come back tomorrow. He says, I'm going to go blindfolded tightrope, and he has a wheelbarrow. I'm going to put someone in the wheelbarrow. Any volunteers? Silence. You might appreciate Bobo up there, but no one actually believes. No one's going to put themselves up there. As the Rambam writes, your emunah is not based on that. And that's why Pinchas ben Yair, he used to do miracles all the time. He walked on water, he did other things. And so the students said, tell me the trick. Tell me the trick. How do you have all the miracles done? He said, you want to know the trick? He didn't say abracadabra first. That wasn't the trick. He said, if you could say that from the time you're bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah and on, you never cause any harm to another person, then you could do miracles also. In other words, the yesod is people do miracles, not God. It's tikkun hamidas, working on ourselves. And all those people, Moshe Rabbeinu, Chanina Menos, they rise above. If you rise above the laws of nature, then, as we said, what's the difference? Vinegar, oil. Everything's a miracle. It's just what we're used to. But to ask God to suspend the laws of nature, that's not something we want to do. And who knows? And are there miracles today? Who knows? We don't know for sure, but we do know is if you want miracles to happen, a person could work on the midas, you work on your ben adam chavero, and that's how miracles happen. So this we'll have to continue, and that's the haracham on Hanukkah. During the time of Hanukkah was the time set besugel for miracles, so that's what others explain. So we'll have to go continue, but there's just a little introduction to Shemos, Va'era, Bo, Beshalach, Yisro. We're going to be dealing with a lot of miracles in the next couple of parshas. PARSHA is just a little bit of an introduction. We'll have to continue on Sunday. The Torah tells us that Va'yeda Elokim, and God knew. And we know God knew. He heard the cries of the Jewish people, and he knew. Very good. He knows everything. So what does it mean by Yeda Elokim? So the Medrash says, what do you mean God knew? The Medrash says that when he was going to kill the Egyptians, so the angel said, what do you mean, Halo of the Avodah Zarah, but Halo of the Avodah Zarah? Why are you discriminating against the Egyptians? There are Jews who worship idols and there are non-Jews. Why only against non-Jews? So the Medrash says because the Jewish people are doing it under duress, they're in slavery, they're being tortured, they're forced, so therefore they're really an onus. But the Egyptians are doing it baratzon. You can't compare someone who does something baratzon willingly versus someone who does an act under duress. So this Medrash has very big halacha l'mais implications. Similar to the questions you were asking, but it's a more fundamental question in terms of, besides, we get into details what you can do, what you can't do, but the fundamental question is, when we all know, when we have We know for three things you don't give up your life for. If someone puts a gun to your head and says worship idols, or kill someone, or commit adultery, so there's a mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, there's a mitzvah of giving up your life. However, for anything else, like let's say you have to be Machalo Shabbos, you have to desecrate the Shabbos, so the Gemara says, V'shamru b'nei Yisrael Shabbos, it's better to Machalo Shabbos 1 week, so you can keep many more. If someone's dying, or you have to go to the hospital and drive in the car, better to violate Shabbos one time, so then you'll live and you'll keep many more. So that's a discussion. Let's say someone's not going to live to the next Shabbos. Does that mean you don't save them? So that's a separate discussion. But either way, that's the principle. That we know that you better desecrate Shabbos once, so therefore a person could keep Shabbos many times. So we know Pikuach Nefesh is Docha Shabbos. So if it's a life-threatening thing, that one is permitted to desecrate the Shabbos and do whatever it takes. So the question is, so you're going to do it. So now let's say you have an emergency, you have to call a doctor. Again, all things being equal, which they never are in real life, but assuming equally competent doctors. Obviously, if you're not comfortable with one doctor, you wouldn't use them, then you call the doctor, the one you're comfortable with, the one you think is better. So if it's not all things being equal, so then it's a non-issue. We don't consider that person a doctor for your purposes, someone you don't think is competent or you don't want to use, and that's the end of it. But assuming you have two equally competent doctors, both Jewish, what happens to be Shomer Shabbos and what happens to be not Shomer Shabbos, but you use them both interchangeably. They work in the same office and they switch around and you like them both. It's not an issue of one doctor better than the other, they're the same. So is it better to call the Shomer Shabbos doctor or the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor, whether to meet you at the hospital, whether to come to your house, whatever the scenario is?
Both Jews.
Right. So what would you say?
Both Machal Shabbos, if they're Machal Shabbos, whether or not they're Shomer Shabbos. They're both Jews. They both are obligated to keep Shabbos.
Right.
So it's equal.
So you're saying there is no preference.
Flip a coin, yeah. That's what I would say.
Right. So you would be a non-issue. It wouldn't be a factor.
I could take personal
I'd say
feelings into if I was going to take feelings and understand that. Halakhically, I don't think it makes a difference, but personal feelings, I would say, okay, I don't want to bother this guy to Shabbos. This guy doesn't really care about Shabbos. I'll call the guy who doesn't care about Shabbos.
What if you call the guy to keep Shabbos because then he was doing it sort of under duress, and the other person would be doing it willingly?
That's very good. So we'll see. So we'll start off with the Beis Halevi. The Beis Halevi quotes this medrash I just quoted by Yedel Okim, that halal of the avodah zarah, halal of the avodah zarah. So he says, what do we see from this medrash? What's the definition of an anus? What's the definition of an act done under duress? Is if the only reason I'm doing this act is because it's an emergency. Let's say I drive in my car all the time. I go golfing, I go to the movies, I go to the beach. So if I do Machal Shabbos all the time, so he says, you're not considered an anus if you, again, so it doesn't make sense that he'd be saying it in a case where the only reason you're going out. In other words, if you're home and you're not doing anything, he calls you up, so it's hard to say that argument because he wouldn't have gone. But let's assume, working with the Beis Halevi, let's assume, if he's already out riding in his car, he's heading to the golf course, but now instead of going to the golf course, he'll go to the hospital. So let's say that's something, we'll assume that's the case, not the other way, but that's a discussion. So according to the Beis Halevi, if the person would be driving on Shabbos or being Machal Shabbos anyway, he's not labeled an anus. And he says better to call the Shomer Shabbos doctor because he wouldn't be considered Machal Shabbos. In fact, the question is, if you're ones and ratzon bahadi hadadi, at the same time you do something under duress, but it's also ratzon. For instance, Rabbi Wasserman, one of the great Gedolim from Europe, who was killed by the Nazis, he doesn't give this example, but we'll give it. Let's say someone goes every day for his lunch special at McDonald's. And that's what he eats every day. And one day he's heading to McDonald's. He's about to walk in, and some guy with a hood over his head comes and puts a gun to him and says, you know what, I know you're Jewish. I know there's laws of kosher. If you don't go into McDonald's and order this food, I'm going to kill you. So we know the luck is it's not something you give up your life for. So he went ahead and he goes to the guy and says the usual. So he says, okay, I'll have the lunch special. And he eats the food. Is that person labeled an onus or not? Because on one hand, what is his ratzon? He'd be eating it anyway, but he's ratzon. So Rav Chanan seems to go with the Beis Halevi, that someone who's onus and ratzon bahadi adari are not labeled an onus, and therefore you consider like you ate there is some type of atonement needed for that act. In fact, along these lines, the hafla, also a sefer they learn in yeshivas, has a similar yisod. The Gemara talks about that. We know the Torah tells us the mitzvah pruvu having kids. So strictly speaking, to fulfill pruvu, you have to have a boy and a girl. So obviously it's a mitzvah out of your control. The result, that's why people say the mitzvah is to be osek. You have to try to have kids, whether you have them or not, that's up to God. But there's a mitzvah pruvu. So what the halacha is, strictly, again, we don't go with this route today, at least definitely not Ashk. I said that once, and there was some Svardim in the house, and they thought maybe it did apply, but for us, B'nai Ashkenaz, it certainly doesn't apply. But the Gemara says that if you're married to a wife for 10 years and you can't have kids, so either way, biblically speaking, you don't necessarily have to divorce your wife, but you could have two wives. Today we don't have two wives. But you either have to divorce your wife or you have to marry another wife because you have to fulfill the mitzvah pruvu. So where do we learn it out from? So they learned it out by Avram. He didn't have kids. So the Gemara says, this is only true if you're living in Eretz Yisrael. If you're living in the land of Israel for 10 years and don't have kids, so then you have to find another wife, you have to find someone else to have kids with. However, if you're living in Chutz La'aretz and you don't have kids, so we can blame it on Avon Chutz La'aretz. We can blame it on the sin of living in Chutz La'aretz. That's why you're not having kids. It has nothing to do with your wife, and therefore you don't have to. That's the Gemara. So Tosfos points out and says, but Bisman Hazeh, during his day, we can talk about it today, but during his day he says, there's no longer a mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael. There's no longer an obligation. Why? Either because during his days, Sakanas Drachim, the danger of traveling, or another reason they give is because it's difficult to keep all the mitzvahs, Atchiliyas, Varet, Shemitah, Truma, Maisa, which isn't necessarily true today, but during the time of Tosfos. Right, so we were discussing if a person doesn't act, if he's ones and ratzon bahadi hadad, he doesn't act and he do anyway, but the circumstance is out of his control, is he labeled someone who does he need atonement or not? So the Beis Halevi said yes, that if you have ratzon, if there's an element of ratzon, so then you're still responsible. And that's what Rabbi Chanan said. So we said if someone goes to McDonald's, he'd be going anyway, and then someone put a gun to his head, he still has a level of atonement. So we're discussing the hafla. The Gemara talks about if you can't have kids after 10 years, you have to get another wife. So, so the Gemara says that only if you're living in Israel. If you're living out of Israel, we assume it's the sin of living outside of Israel that's causing you not to have kids. Tosfos points out, but Bisman Hazeh, during his day there was no mitzvah. So the hafla says if that's the case, then if there is no mitzvah today, so then even if you're living in Chutz La'aretz, you should have to divorce your wife. Because I can't say it's the sin of Chutz La'aretz that's stopping you. If there's no mitzvah to live in Israel, you can't say it's a sin to live in Chutz La'aretz. So he says, so therefore it should apply even in Chutz La'aretz. He says no, because we all know, because even if there was a mitzvah to live in Israel, none of us would go anyway. So therefore you're not really an honest, you're really a baratzah, and therefore you can still say, even though you're living in Chutz La'aretz, but you could still say it's the avon of living in Chutz La'aretz because you went to one anyway, which causes you not to have the kids. In fact, it's interesting, there was a similar thing, the Rinas Yitzchak writes, a sefer on Navi, and Chumash, by Yosef, that Yosef died shorter than he was supposed. He lost a couple of years of his life, and I think he lost 10 years, because it says the 10 times in the Torah, the Medrash says, where Yehuda and the brothers called Avdecha Yaakov, like just serving Yaakov. They said it to Yosef, and Yosef didn't make a protest. You're talking about your father as servant, so he was punished. But if you look it up in the Chumash, there's only 5 times. So where do they get to 10? The 10 times is 5 times in Hebrew, and the other 5 times, Yehuda said it in Hebrew, and then the translator did it into Egypt. So the question is, but Yosef couldn't make a macha in the Hebrew because they know who he was. It was before he revealed himself. But he said, but since he didn't stop him, the translator in English, so he gets punished even for the same concept. And that's in fact tying it into this week's parsha as well. Golus Mitzrayim. It's the Ramban, that we know that God told Abraham that the Jews are going to be slaves in Mitzrayim for many years. Or it didn't actually say Mitzrayim, but at the Bris Ben Absarim, the Jews are going to be enslaved. So the question is, so why are the Egyptians punished then? Why are we going to see next week, the week after, the plagues? Why are they punished? Abraham was already told. So some learn, well, it didn't have to be them. It didn't say anywhere the Egyptians, and they chose it on their own. But others say, that's not an answer, so what? I know that's Ratzon Hashem. A lot of anti-Semites say this. It's Ratzon Hashem. He wants the Jews to suffer. So what do you mean? You can't say that you should be the one doing it. So what's the pshat? So the pshat is because if you see what happened, that's the Ramban writes, that all it says we're going to be enslaved. The Egyptians went far greater than what was decreed. That's why we only did 210 years instead of the 400, 420, because so we see that if they just did what was the minimum and they had to, then you're right, then maybe they would have got rewarded for it. They could have got schar for enslaving the Jews if they just did what they had to do. But for the fact that they did more, they get punished on everything, not just the extra, because it shows even what they did do nothing to do with the Gzeira. It's a bunch of anti-Semites. The same idea, if you're Ratzon and Onus at the same time, you're not labeled, Egyptians didn't go unpunished. So we see, we have the Beis HaLevi, we have the Beis HaLevi, we have Rav Elchanan, we have the concept of you're doing an Onus and Ratzon at the same time, so you're not labeled, you're not fully exempt from it. And therefore, the Beis HaLevi concludes, he says that it's better to call the Shomer Shabbos doctor than the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor, because the only reason he's going to desecrate the Shabbos is for this emergency per se, but if not for this, he wouldn't be going. That's what the Beis HaLevi says. It's Tzitz Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer Waldenberg, who used to be the chief rabbi in the Hadassah, the big hospital in Israel. Mm-hmm. So he was the big rabbi. Actually quotes the Beis HaLevi, but you can't tell if he's quoting it as a big wonder, like, wow, it's a tremendous chiddush to say what he's saying, which it is. And therefore, he says, I agree with the conclusion of the Beis HaLevi, but for a totally different reason. What's the different reason? He says, different reason is that, why you should call the Shomer Shabbos doctor. Let's say that you think it's an emergency, Jewish mommy, you're very worried about your kids. You get there, oh, it's just a little virus, but it wasn't an emergency, you didn't know, so it was fine. But you called the doctor, he came, and everything's fine now. So the question is, or maybe you only need some medication, or it's not a life-threatening thing, whatever the case may be, it could wait. So therefore, if it's the Shomer Shabbos doctor, he knows all the accessories, and he knows the do's and don'ts. What he can do, He doesn't have to write a prescription now. He's not going to turn on lights unnecessarily. He'll know within maneuvering around along the lines that you were asking, that a Shomer Shabbos will know what he can do, what he can't do. So out the emergency, it doesn't make a difference. He doesn't go with the Beis Halevi. You're an honest. It's a Shabbos emergency. It could be also, it depends, as I said, I think the Beis Halevi makes more sense if he's driving already, he's going out to go golfing, and then he switches route. It's hard to say that if he's sitting home in his house not violating Shabbos, then maybe he wouldn't have went out that Shabbos. So, but Sifra Azilis is saying, it's not all they're equal. But I'll tell you why you should call the Shomer. They both could come to the emergency. I'm worried about if it's not an emergency. And therefore the Shomer Shabbos. So again, he says it's better the Shomer Shabbos doctor, but for a totally different reason. And when I first heard the Shaila, I thought the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor was better. And then I found out I'm in good company. Not that the other opinion isn't in good company, but Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, as well as Rav Moshe Feinstein, seem to go with me, that they say better to call the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor. Why? So I'm not sure if they give the same reason as me, but I think Rav Yaakov did for sure, maybe Rav Moshe as well, because Shabbos is 25 hours. So let's say you have an emergency, so where's the Shomer Shabbos doctor? He's at shul, he's at the Kiddush club, he's eating his cholent, he's sleeping, all these tremendous mitzvahs, he's learning. So he's doing mitzvahs anyway, why bother him? But the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor, he's watching all the games on his Direct TV, HD, maybe on his Mac, who knows what he's doing. So at least for the 2, 3, 4 hours that he's involved in emergency, it's a tremendous mitzvah. You turn from being a Machal Shabbos to doing the best mitzvah possible. And therefore, that's why Rav Yaakov concludes, and Rav Moshe, like I thought, it's better to call the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor, because at least for that time period, he's not being Shomer Shabbos. In fact, the Gemara I left out, the famous Gemara that ties into this is, this whole issue is, someone was going fishing on Shabbos. Fishing is a biblical prohibition. And I guess only if you're successful. If you're a lousy fisher, you're okay. It's only if you actually catch something, so you're trapping, and that could be a violation of one of the Lamites Malachas. So, a person's fishing, and lo and behold, he comes up, and let's say he catches some fish, but he finds a little kid just fell in the water, and he just pulled them out. He saved their life. He had no idea he was going to fish. So is this person labeled a Machal Shabbos or not? He was fishing on Shabbos, but he pulled up a child, let's say, together with the fish. So the Gemara says, what's the issue? Do you go basa maisa or basa machshava? Do you go by the act or do you go by the thought? If you go by the act, the bottom line is Hatzalas Nefashos. He saved a life. It's a tremendous mitzvah. However, if you go basa machshava, then his machshava was the Machal Shabbos. His machshava was the trap, which was, in essence, to be Machal Shabbos. So therefore, that's the Gemara's question, and it's not clear how the conclusion is, because the different opinions, one is Rabba, one is Rava, but the different gersos, so therefore, it's, the different ways of answering up. But this is the issue when you have a machshava. The machshava is Chilul Shabbos or whatever, an Aveira, but Lamaisi, you do a tremendous act. So, so in general we live in the world of Maisa, not Machshava, but as we discussed in our Ben Adam Mechaver, that could be a difference between, that's what the Klei Chemda writes. This whole issue in the Gemara is only whether you're labeled a Machal Shabbos. That's a mitzvah Ben Adam Lamakom. In a mitzvah Ben Adam Lamakom, you can discuss the Iker is Machshava, Maisa. But when it comes to Ben Adam Mechavero, the Maisa is the key. So, that's what we discussed in the different times. But that's what, this Gemara is our issue here, when your own, and in fact, that's what the same Machlokes, and Rav Shlomo Zalman seems to go with the other side. So it's known as the famous Machlokes, Rav Moshe Feinstein versus Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Should you call a Shomer Shabbos doctor or not? Rav Moshe says, non-Shomer Shabbos doctor is better, and Rosh Shlomo Zalman. There's no way. How could you, with Naiver, how could you, he's going like the Beis Halev. If you call a non-Shomer Shabbos, you're causing him to sin because you're getting him to drive. Or similar, the same question is a residence. You got put on the Shabbos residence, but your friend who's Jewish doesn't care. He's not so. Could you switch it? Since Rosh Hashanah says no. How could you? With Naiver, are you causing another Jew to be Machal Shabbos? Or Moshe says no. For whatever the reasons are, better to. He's going to do it anyway. So let him, at least with that same thing, let him be involved in the mitzvah of Rofei Cholim, etc. Hopefully he'll have a lot of emergencies that Shabbos. And then similarly, that's the issue also. Similar question on the Temple Mount, that the different soldiers, we have patrols on the Temple Mount. So there's general areas where you're not supposed to go up and what you should be wearing. So again, let's say you have a Shomer Mitzvahs. Let's say you have someone who's Shomer Mitzvahs and doesn't want to, ordinarily would not go on the Temple Mount, and someone else. And it's the same question. Could you switch turns with him? That's just that borders on the same issue. It seems to be a machokes, Rav Moshe and Rosh Shlomo Zalman. Yeah, we'll have to continue at another time. But that's all based on this medrash in this week's parsha about what's the definition, of onus. If you onus and ratzon, bahadi adadi, are you labeled an onus or a ratzon?
That's very interesting.